Hello and welcome. In today's exciting episode, I make a Chanel style jacket from this Butterick pattern. It's perfect, 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 perfect. Perfect jacket. This pattern is Butterick 6328 open front jackets, so there's no buttons, and I'm doing version A with the blue one in the corner. Spoiler alert, this is the finished jacket. Now, before I show you step by step how I made this, I thought I'd just show you the other two patterns that I use pretty much all the time for a Chanel style jacket, and then point out a few differences in this pattern that I'm making now. So this one on the left here is the vintage Chanel style, more of a cardigan relaxed fit, and the one on the right is more like Karl Lagerfeld era, so slim fit with really long sleeves. So if you like 90s or the first 2 decades of this century, that's the Vogue 7975. And this one here, the relaxed fit one, is a discontinued McCall's pattern, M6041, and you can still buy it on eBay. It does have a few glitches in that pattern, so I wouldn't exactly recommend it unless you know how to fix mistakes in drafting. But I've got a playlist called Just Jackets, and I go into that in that. But this is a Butterick one, Butterick 6328, and it gives you that vintage Chanel silhouette, in my opinion. It is much simpler and it has less detail than the McCall's and the Vogue ones. The one that I'm making now, the Butterick, just has one front piece and one back piece, whereas the McCall's and the Vogue both have princess seams. So there's 2 bits on the front and 3 sections of the back, side back, centre back, side back. So, but I think this is a pretty good one. So without further ado, let's make this jacket. I haven't tried this pattern before, so I'm doing a wearable mock-up first out of cotton canvas, and it's got pinks and reds in there, so I think it's fine for Valentine's Day month. And it's also got frangipanis and bougainvillea, and I think and some tropical leaves, and I'm not sure what those pink ones are supposed to be, and some, I think, wisteria. So yeah, it's really pretty, and it's just sort of a denim weight cotton. So first of all, I cut out all the bits, and there's just a back and 2 fronts. It's really simple. So I've laid down my structural layer, which is just netting, and then on top of that, I've put my cotton canvas, thick sort of denim weight cotton. And then I pinned all the, this is for the lining, so I'm going to set that aside and do the lining later, do the outer jacket first. So I pinned all the pieces together, so those 2 over on the left are the sleeve, and then I pinned them all together. Then I machine sewed all the long seams, so here we are. And once I'd done all the long seams, then I pinned the shoulders together at the top, so the front top and the back top, pin them together and machine sewed them. Now I've just turned it out, and just to check that there's no puckering or anything like that. If you do accidentally do some pleats or puckers, just unpick it and resew it. It's nothing major, so it's all fine. And the next thing is to pin back all the seam allowance, and I have to hand stitch that down. I'll probably just stitch the seam allowances to each other and to the netting. I won't actually pick up the outside fabric, so the stitches, the hand done stitches, won't be visible from the outside of the jacket, but they will be secure on the inside. Kind of bothers me that the 2 fronts, the left and the right, are so symmetrical, like the big blob of bougainvillea and the big blob of frangipanis. So, but yeah, not enough to change it, but because I'm going to do some beading and sequins work over the top. Anyway, I'm going to go do those seams now, hand stitch those. Hours of fun. Hours and hours. So eventually all the seams are done, so I just hand stitch them down. And now the next thing is and these flowers are just so pretty, so the next thing is to turn up the hem And so I just measured it along and pinned it in place, and then I hand stitched it. And when I do the cuffs, I turn the sleeve out the correct way. Then I pin the cuff up and I hand stitch it, turn it up to hand stitch it. I know it looks really awkward and it looks like it would be easier to do it inside out, but this way you get the cuff. It has the proper roundness and it sits beautifully when it's finished. Ta-da! I finished the hand stitching. So now that that's done, it is time to reinforce the shoulders. So I just had a couple of scraps of the netting and left over, and basically I just got 2 bits and I cut them in half, so it's 2 layers of netting just over the shoulder. So then I pinned them, and if you have trouble knowing what the roundness of the shoulder is, just turn your jacket inside out, put it on your mannequin, and then pin them there, then stitch them, and that way you won't, it's better than doing it flat. So, yep, I did that, and then I turned it in the right way so you can sort of see what it's like. The smaller size this Butterick pattern, Butterick 6328 comes in, is a size 8, and I'm normally a size 6. So it is a bit, if you think it looks a lot baggier than the other jackets I make, you're right, it is a little bit big. But I just thought I'd make this size and then go from there once I've made the wearable mock-up. The next step is to set the sleeves, so attach the sleeves. But here I'm just sort of walking around the body of the jacket because I was concerned that the those blobs of frangipani and the blobs of the red bougainvillea were going to look too sort of symmetrical or something, but I think they look good. Because the jacket is so curved once it's on the body or on a mannequin, I'm quite happy with it. I'm not worried about it anymore. So let's set those sleeves. Time to pin them on. Magic! So they're pinned on. It's very exciting stuff. Now it is time to carefully sew them with the sewing machine. These sleeves are not quite as ultra slim as the Vogue 7975, so they are easier to sew on the sewing machine, so there is that. So once you've machine sewn them, you turn the jacket out and just check that everything's right and there's no puckers or anything, and then the next thing you do is reinforce them, so sew it again. Once your sleeves are sewn on, then you have to trim down like the bottom third of the underarm. You trim that down and then you clip the curves so that it'll sit nicely. Then from the outside you pin down the seam allowance up into the sleeve. I'll show you some other footage from a different jacket. I made this jacket last year and you can actually see through it, so you can see what I'm doing. So I've pinned on the outside, but on the inside I wiggle my fingers and you can see that I've caught up the seam allowance in there. So I stitch it twice. The first time I hand stitch it from the outside and sort of one hand's on the inside, one hand's on the outside, and then I turn the whole thing inside out and I carefully stitch down again. So you can see it here. It does require a lot of work, but I hear on social media, you hear a lot of people complaining that the sleeves fall off their jackets. I think it's because they don't stitch down the seam allowance. It just reinforces the shoulders and makes the whole jacket more structurally sound. So I feel like it's a worthwhile investment of my time. So once I've done all the stitching, I just roll the shoulder seam between my fingers and it sort of makes everything settle properly. And now we leave that on the mannequin and it's time to do the lining. So as I showed you before, the yoke is out of the outer fabric and the rest is made out of silk. So I cut out all the pieces. You can see there's a little pleat in the back so that when you put your jacket on and take it off, it has that little bit of stretch. And then you attach the lining. If you need more detail on this, as I said, I've got a whole playlist called Just Jackets. And I mean, the long videos have more detail. The shorter videos have slightly less detail. So once the lining's in, it is time to turn the whole thing inside out and just pin the neckline and stitch that, machine sew that. Once you machine sew it, turn it out, check that it's fine, then turn it back again and machine sew it again to reinforce it. Then you cut down the seam allowance. This just means that when you turn it in the proper way, see, it is quite a lot that I've cut out, but it just means that when you turn it back in the correct way, it will sit nicely. So clip the curve, and what I do here is sort of cut out V's so that it really does sit nicely. So you can see here, and you sort of reinforce the corners as well and clip those. Then you carefully turn it out and make sure you get your corners as well as you like them. The next step is to top stitch up the front, around the neckline, and down the front again. So here we go. You can't really see it, but you'll see the odd stitch. I sort of do a pin stitch rather than a top stitch, and because I prefer it that way, and I always hand stitch. You shouldn't be able to see any visible machine stitches if you're trying to do it haute couture. So the next step, the last step in finishing your jacket, is to turn under the silk lining and pin that down and hand stitch it. And once your lining's down, then you hand stitch a chain on there if you want the weight that way. I'm going to leave my lining open because, as I said, I'm going to embellish this with beads and sequins. So yeah. Here is my finished jacket. As I said, it's a size larger than I normally make. And yeah, so that's why it's a little bit baggy. But apart from that, I really love it. And I don't mind having a bunch of, because otherwise I just have the two different sizes. I kind of like the idea of having some that are a little bit baggier that you can wear other layers underneath. I mean, it's silk lining, so warmth-wise, you don't need other layers. But it's nice to sometimes have, you know, other layers for style reasons rather than, yeah. I mean, I kind of just wear Chanel style jacket, t-shirt and jeans. That's kind of my uniform, but I like it. I might redraft it and make it a smaller size. But for now, I don't know. I think I'll wait and bead this one and see what it looks like with the weight of beads. Because, yeah, as you can see, it does look like a baggier, too big version of a jacket. I think if you're a larger size, it's perfectly fine. But if you're a teeny tiny person who doesn't have adult size shoulders, it does present a little bit of a problem. But I don't know, I kind of like the relaxedness of it. And yeah, it is very much in keeping with the style and silhouette of a vintage Chanel jacket. I suppose it is a bit more cropped, so it's probably a 1960s Chanel, but the earlier ones are probably a little bit, yeah, longer. The Butterick pattern does have a longer length. I just went with the shortest possible one. So yeah, if you're making this for yourself and you want it vintage Chanel looking, like original Coco Chanel, then I'd probably go with the lower, I think it's B, that size. But yeah, this is my absolute favorite sort of Karl Lagerfeld era Chanel style jacket, and it's beautifully fitted around the shoulder blades and then sort of hugs the torso, whereas these two are quite baggy like the vintage Chanels. So yeah, I think this pattern here, this Butterick one that I literally just made, I think I'll bead it first and see how it carries the weight, because I think once you put the weight of either a chain on the inside back or the beads, I think it's just going to be beautiful, just based on all the work I've done on previous jackets. But I mean, I could size it down, but I think this is going to be a really good base jacket pattern for the floral jackets that I make. I've only made the yellow one so far, but I've got loads of other fabric flowers, and I want to make like a red and pink one, and then I want to make a blue and purple one. So yeah, I've been looking for a base jacket pattern to go with that, and I think this is it. So thank you very much for watching, and yeah, I have a couple of other new Chanel style jacket patterns that I'm going to try out. But yeah, all in all, I think this wearable mock-up is an absolute success. Love it lots. And how cute is the vintage jumper dress with the 1950s petticoat underneath it? It is adorable. Anyway, thanks again for watching. And yeah, go make yourself a Chanel style jacket. They're pretty awesome.